You know exactly what you need to do. That's the thing nobody talks about. You're not confused. You're not lost. You're not waiting for clarity. You have the books, you have the frameworks, you have the highlight reel of every atomic habit, every compound effect, every 5 a.m. principle, sitting there, perfectly organized, perfectly understood, perfectly useless. And the worst part? You're smart enough to know that. You can diagnose your own patterns mid-spiral. You can name your avoidance strategies while you're still doing them. You can quote the psychology of procrastination while procrastinating. You've read about the comfort zone. You've read about the growth zone. You've built a mental map of the exact gap between who you are and who you could be. And you stand at that gap and don't move. This video is not going to give you another framework. It's not going to tell you to wake up earlier, start small, or believe in yourself harder. What I'm going to tell you is something most self-help content is terrified to say. The reason you can't start has nothing to do with motivation. It has nothing to do with discipline. It has nothing to do with the quality of your knowledge. It has everything to do with something living underneath your knowledge, something older than your ambitions, something that has been running the show since before you read your first self-help book. And until you see it, really see it, no amount of information will ever be enough. Here's what you've been told your problem is. You lack discipline. You need better habits. You need stronger willpower. You need to break it into smaller steps. You need accountability. You need the right morning routine. And you've tried all of it. Some of it even worked. For a week, maybe 2, maybe a month if you were really locked in. And then something happened. Not a failure, not a dramatic collapse, just a slow, quiet retreat back to exactly where you started. Back to knowing everything and doing nothing. And you told yourself the same story every time. I just need to be more consistent. I'll start fresh Monday. I just need the right system. But here's what that story is hiding. You have been treating a psychological problem as a logistical one. You've been rearranging furniture in a house built on a cracked foundation. The discipline approach. The habits approach. It assumes the obstacle is external. It assumes that if you just engineer the right conditions, the right triggers, the right rewards, the self that is already fully formed and ready inside you will finally walk out the door. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is that there is a part of you, a deep, sophisticated, entirely unconscious part of you that does not want you to start. And it is far more powerful than your morning routine. What Carl Jung actually understood about you. Carl Jung spent decades studying why people destroy their own potential. Not out of stupidity, not out of laziness, but out of what he called a conflict between the ego and the shadow. Here's the simplest way to understand it. Your ego is who you think you are, the conscious, narrating, planning version of you, the one watching this right now, the one who bought the books, made the lists, set the goals. Your shadow is everything you've pushed down, suppressed, decided doesn't belong to the version of you that you're building. The fears, the grief, the parts of you that remember every time you tried and fell apart. Now here's the part that changes everything. When you set a goal, when you decide, I'm going to finally build this business, write this book, transform my body, start this channel, your ego makes the announcement, but your shadow runs the calculations. And what does the shadow calculate? What happens if I fail again? Not in an obvious way, not in a way you can catch. Subtly, silently, in the exact language of your oldest wounds. For some of you, it sounds like, who are you to think you deserve this? For others, last time you tried, you looked stupid. For others, if this fails, there's nothing left to blame but you. And so the shadow does the most sophisticated thing in the world. It doesn't stop you with fear, it stops you with knowledge. It hands you another book, another framework, another course, another podcast. Because as long as you're learning, As long as you're preparing, you're not failing. You're being responsible. You're being thorough. You're being smart. The library becomes the hiding place. And the most dangerous part? It looks exactly like growth. Let me show you what this looks like in real time. You wake up with energy. Today's the day. You're going to work on the project. You're going to write the first page, make the first call, record the first video. You open your laptop, and something pulls you, just briefly, to check one thing. A video, an article, something relevant, actually, something genuinely useful about the thing you're about to do. 40 minutes later, you've watched 3 videos, read 2 articles, and added 4 books to your reading list. And here's the genius of it. You feel productive. You feel like you did something. Your brain got the dopamine of progress without the terror of exposure. This is what Jung would call the psyche protecting its equilibrium. The shadow isn't sabotaging you out of malice. It's protecting you. It learned, probably very early, that attempting things and being seen failing is dangerous. Maybe it was a parent who mocked you. Maybe it was a school that punished mistakes. Maybe it was a moment when you went all in on something and it broke you. Your shadow doesn't know how old you are now. It doesn't know you have more resources, more resilience, more skill than you did then. It only knows one thing. The last time you tried, it hurt. And so it gives you books instead. Or it gives you perfectionism, the conviction that the conditions aren't right yet, the plan isn't tight enough, the version of you that exists right now isn't ready. There's a slightly better, slightly more prepared version of you that will be ready soon, maybe next month. This is not laziness. This is your unconscious running a protection racket. And it is brilliant. And it is destroying you. Aurelius knew that Freud didn't. Jung gives us the map of why this happens. The Stoics give us the first move through it. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor, one of the most powerful men in history. He wrote his private journal, a book we now call Meditations. He was talking to himself. And what did the most powerful man in the world write to himself? You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Not discipline, not motivation, not knowledge. Power over the mind. The Stoics understood something modern self-help has completely forgotten. You do not act your way into better thinking. You think your way into different action. But, and this is the part they actually meant, thinking doesn't mean acquiring more information. It means confronting the thought you've been avoiding. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters." But what he was really saying is, you have to be present enough to react at all. Most of us never get there. We are so busy managing our inner narrative, maintaining the story of, "I just need to prepare a little more," that we never actually make contact with the moment of choice. The Stoics would tell you that every moment you delay, you are not being cautious. You are choosing the shadow over the self. You are choosing the comfortable prison of knowledge over the terrifying freedom of action. And every day you make that choice, the walls get a little thicker. So what do you actually do? First, stop trying to outrun the shadow with more information. You cannot read your way out of this. I'm going to say that again because it is the most important thing in this video. You cannot read your way out of a psychological problem. Every book you read without acting on it is not preparation. It is evidence for the case your shadow is building. You're still not ready. The path through is not around the fear, it is into it. Jung called this shadow integration. It sounds mystical. It isn't. It means this: you have to acknowledge what you're actually afraid of. Not abstractly, not philosophically, specifically. Sit down, right now if you want, and answer this question honestly. If I started this thing today, if I fully committed, gave it everything, and did it as well as I possibly could, what is the worst version of what could happen? Not the logical worst case, The emotional worst case. What would it mean about you? Write it down, say it out loud, let it be real. Because the shadow loses most of its power the moment you look at it directly. It is designed to operate in the dark, in the peripheral vision, in the unnamed feeling of resistance that you've been calling lack of motivation for years. Name it, and it shrinks. This is not metaphysics. This is what happens neurologically when you engage the prefrontal cortex with a fear that has been running on the amygdala's autopilot. You literally rewire the circuit. Integration doesn't look like a transformation. Not at first. It looks like doing the thing badly. It looks like recording the first video and hating your voice. Writing the first page and thinking it's terrible. Making the first call and fumbling your words. Building the first version and knowing it's not what you imagined. And here's the Jungian truth of it. That discomfort, that gap between what you imagined and what you produced, is not failure. It is proof that you are finally in reality. The version of you that stays in the books lives in a perfect, protected space where your ideas are still pristine. Your potential is still unlimited. Your future self is still untarnished by actual contact with the world. The moment you act, you enter the real world. And the real world is messy and humbling and alive. Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Not the idealized self, not the future self you've been building in your imagination while reading all those books. The actual self, imperfect, unready, beginning anyway. That self is not less than the imagined version. That self is the only version that can actually build anything." You came into this video thinking you had a knowledge problem. You don't. You have never had a knowledge problem. You have a courage problem, and not in the way that word is usually used. Not the theatrical courage of overcoming dramatic odds, the quieter, harder courage of beginning as you are, of making the imperfect first attempt without the armor of more preparation, of putting something real into the world before you feel ready, before the conditions are ideal, before the version of you you've been designing is fully assembled. The knowing-doing gap is not a flaw in your character. It is not evidence that you're broken or lazy or less than anyone else. It is the natural result of a psyche that learned to protect itself and never got the memo that the danger it was protecting against is mostly gone now. Your shadow built its walls in the past. You are living in the present, and the present has one thing the past never did. It has you, all of you, aware enough to see the pattern, honest enough to name the fear, and ready enough to take one imperfect, terrifying, completely sufficient first step. Not when you're ready, now, because ready was always the lie.